everyone to MCED's annual Law Enforcement Appreciation Dinner and Awards Ceremony. I'm Frank McCready, President and CEO of East Montgomery County Improvement District. We'd like to recognize some of those in attendance tonight, like the elected officials in the room. I'd like to start out this evening recognizing First Lady Cecilia Abbott. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We have our existing board of directors. If I could get you guys to please stand up, this is what makes this whole thing possible.
Is Danica McKellar. Yes, I played Winnie Cooper on Wonder Years many years ago. These days, by the way, I still act. I've done a bunch of Hallmark movies, and now I'm doing new movies for a new channel called Great American Family. Regardless, I wanted to thank all of you for coming out to the East Montgomery County Improvement District's Law Enforcement Appreciation Dinner. This is to thank all of you for being so wonderful for the community. They appreciate you so much. In fact, the entire community does. This was so wonderful. In New Caney, Texas, I'm told that there is so much love and support that the community has for all the police officers, all the hard work and attention to detail, and that you are such a huge component of the growth that the area has been seeing. So thank you so much. In particular, I would like to congratulate, first of all of the officers, but in particular, Daniel Vieira, Chris Keene, Ethan McAdoo, and Benjamin Polanski. I didn't mean to zoom in, but that was dramatic for effect, right? I don't know why I did that. Thank you to everyone for coming. It is such a pleasure to myself be able to thank all of you personally for everything that you do for the community. I know it's not the easiest job these days, and I am so appreciative that we have so many really wonderful law enforcement helping to keep this country strong. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of the celebration. Thank you again to everyone for coming out.
This time, let's
to be here tonight and encourage our law enforcement. I was thinking backstage before we bless this and just honor God with a prayer. I remember the first time I got pulled over in Montgomery County, the first lawman that ever pulled me over. And I was 17 years old, and I'm going to tell you why the lawman pulled me over. Because I saw two girls in a parking lot, and so I decided to burn that rubber off the backside of my truck. And he pulled me over for exhibition of acceleration. That was my first ticket I ever got. But I felt that money was well spent because I got to show those girls how much horsepower this truck had. So I feel very safe here tonight with all these lawmen. How about yourself? You feel safe? Thank God for that. Nonetheless, I do count it a privilege to go before the throne of grace on behalf of the men and the women that do keep us safe and do take on the responsibility of a lawman and upholding the Constitution and protecting the fellow humans. And so we're so thankful for that, even in a crazy climate we live in. I want the lawmen here to know, the ladies to know, listen, we support you and we pray for you and we respect what you do, and we count it a great honor to have you lawmen take care of us in this town. So to God be the glory on that. Let us pray together. Father, we thank you for tonight. The reason why we're thankful, Father, because the Word teaches us to honor one another as we go through this life. And Father, tonight, as these law men and women, Father, are recognized in the trade, the profession that they've taken on, Father, we want them to know that there is a culture, there is a group of people that do respect their efforts, and we understand that you are the one that establishes the law and to organize us under a government, and we thank you for that. Father, we ask you to keep them safe in their journeys, give them wisdom, give them strength to do their job and to protect others. Thank you for the sacrificial side of their lives. Father, we pray over the food tonight. We pray over all that's represented, Father, tonight, and all the efforts it's made, Father. Father, we say this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
This time I'd ask Crystal Moore, one of our existing board members, to come up and lead us in the U.S. Pledge.
Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and remain standing.
And I'd like to ask Liz Mullane, one of our existing board members, to come up and lead us in the Texas pledge.
Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
All right, let's be seated, please. We're especially excited to have Texas First Lady Cecilia Abbott with us this evening. In January 2015, she made history in becoming the first Hispanic First Lady of Texas. She's been a teacher, a vice principal, and principal at several Catholic schools across Texas, and she has also worked in senior healthcare services. Cecilia hasn't only devoted her professional life to helping others, she's done the same in her personal life. She serves on the board of several educational organizations and is a member of many philanthropic groups. Her signature initiative as First Lady combines the two things she is most passionate about: Texas and philanthropy. She calls it Texanthropy. That should be in the dictionary soon. So she's working on it. She promotes volunteerism and service to others across Texas. Cecilia has also partnered with the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services on similar initiatives. The Network of Nurture. This is to raise awareness about the ways Texans can support the children and families in the state's child welfare system. Cecilia collaborates with the governor's child sex trafficking team, the Department of Family and Protective Services, and a diverse group of faith leaders across Texas who work together to develop effective strategies to end human trafficking. It's called the Grace Initiative, the governor's response against child exploitation. She's a devoted wife to her husband of 41 years, Governor Greg Abbott, and a proud mother to daughter Audrey and dogs. This is my best thing. How do you not like Pancake and Peaches? You gotta love those dogs. Everyone, please help me in welcoming First Lady Cecilia Abbott.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me to join you this evening. As I'm sure many of you know, supporting our law enforcement officers is so important to me and to Greg. Greg always says, in Texas, we back the blue. And I can tell you, Greg has your back. This sentiment rings true for both of us. If you are a current or former law enforcement officer, will you please stand so that we can recognize you? Thank you so much for your endless courage, for your selfless service, and for the sacrifices you make each and every day to keep your fellow Texans safe. In Texas, we cherish our law enforcement, especially those whose bravery and valor led to the ultimate sacrifice. We remember and honor those who were taken from us so soon. And to the families who stand by your side, thank you for your own sacrifices and for the support you provide to your loved ones who wear the badge. We have law enforcement in my family too. My niece, Clarissa, is a police officer in my hometown of San Antonio. And although Texas was once considered the Wild West, a land where famous lawmen lived and served, peace officers who serve today do so during a critical and pivotal time in our society. The work you are asked to do is complex, multifaceted, and often dangerous. It takes brave men and women to face danger head-on, every shift, every day. You've been asked to respond to civil unrest, to the crisis at our border, to the COVID-19 pandemic, and more. But whatever the danger, Texas law enforcement consistently answers the call to serve their fellow Texans. Whatever the challenge may be, you rise to it. I always say there's nothing on this earth more powerful than Texans helping Texans. And our Texas law enforcement officers live out that mantra day in and day out in service to their fellow Texans. I believe each of us is called to service in one way or another, and you have answered that call to serve our state and all who call it home. We are forever grateful for your service and dedication. Thank you again for having me here this evening. May God bless you all, and may God bless Texas. Thank you.
And I believe next we also have another video message.
What are you for?
What's up, New Caney, Texas? What up, y'all? This is a special shout out to the East Montgomery County Improvement District and everybody there. How y'all doing? I hope the dinner's going great. This is your annual Law Enforcement Appreciation Dinner, where we want to thank the local police for everything that you've done in the community. But you know what? I got some noises for you guys. Actually, it's for the police dogs. But you know what? Congratulations to everybody, and especially your Officers of the Year. So I got the names right here. Let's do the shout out for the names. So begin. David Miller. Make some noise for David Miller, everybody. That's right. Henry Mestizo. Keith Del Harris. And congratulations to all of them. Back to your meals, back to a wonderful dinner. Take care of your practice your nurses. Michael Winslow. Peace.
So at this point, it's one of our favorite points of the evening. It's time to eat. So at this point, thank you to the men and women who protect our community. At a time when police are often criticized and second-guessed regarding their motives and actions, we want you to know we feel, and everyone in this room feels extremely grateful to you for your fight against crime. You make us feel safe. You offer a community that residents can be proud of and people want to visit. And most importantly, provide an environment that makes it easy to recruit businesses to and expansion opportunities to come to our community in a very pro-police and a safe environment. Our guest speaker tonight has come under fire a time or two in his nearly 40 years in law enforcement. David Clarke is the former sheriff of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. Over the years, he's witnessed growing racial tension, animosity toward law enforcement, and disregard for the constitutional process. He's quite outspoken, many of you probably know. That's okay. You can often find him as a guest commentator for national news programs. He believes we must stop blaming others take ownership of our family, community, and country, and turn to God for solutions. His new podcast, Straight Talk with America's Sheriff, David Clarke, premieres next month. He's also joined forces with Chris Hansen of To Catch a Predator on the new streaming service called True Blue, which focuses on true crime. He'll host the new series, Police in the Line of Fire, coming out later this year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome America's Sheriff, David Clarke.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, not for me, but to honor the men and women who put on the uniform of their community to go out and protect and serve. The way I felt about it, I served in law enforcement nearly 40 years. I felt there was only one higher honor than getting to wear the uniform of the community that I grew up in. I'm a native of the city of Milwaukee, born and raised, Wisconsin. And the only other higher honor is when you get to wear the uniform of your country and go off to defend our way of life, defend freedom. So I want to thank all the law enforcement officers in here. I want to specifically thank the awardees tonight, but I want to remind the awardees of one thing. All right, you didn't do that alone. What you're going to be recognized for, you had help along the way. So as you accept those awards, please do it and let the people know around you that you share that award with them. And that includes another group in this law enforcement community that often gets forgotten about, and that's the support staff and the support services. Those people are vital, the dispatchers, the clerical workers. Those people are vital in helping the officers on the front line go out and protect and serve when you need a wanted check. Okay, sometimes you have your own computers in the cars, but you rely on the dispatchers, you rely on the clerical staff to help you get that job done. So every once in a while, stop and just thank those support staff members for what they do, because they don't hear it enough. I always made it sure when I was the sheriff of Milwaukee County that was a special class of people. And I made it clear to my officers and my command staff, I better never hear of a support staff worker being disrespected or abused, because I didn't like it. So I want you to keep those things in mind. A couple of housekeeping items here before I get started with my presentation. You can follow me on social media. On Twitter, it's @SheriffClarke, C-L-A-R-K-E. On Instagram, it's Sheriff David Clarke. And on Facebook, it is Sheriff David A. Clarke, the Clarke with an E. And, you know, it's not that you have to do that sort of thing, because the way I look at this, who I am is not important. What I do and what I have to say is very important. So you'll find a lot of that on those social media sites. I usually opine on things that are going on in the world, so I'll always attach a story. You'll rarely hear a social media post, or read, I should say, of mine, where it's just some words, my opinion. Okay, I attach a story to it and I say, here's how I see this thing. It was talked about a little earlier in my introduction about my new ventures, the streaming service TV show that I'll be the host of. I'm real excited about that. It gives me an opportunity. We're going to talk about police issues, and it'll give me a chance to explain why these things happen in law enforcement the way they do. And I'll do it from a kind of a layperson's perspective, leave out a lot of the police jargon and some of that stuff that confuses people at times. And then the podcast, Straight Talk, which will be up sometime in March as well. Why that's important for me, because as I travel this great country, and this is a great country, I've been in now up to 39 states over the last 4 or 5 years, meeting people of all walks across this great nation. And I've been treated well everywhere I go. I'm kind of humbled by it. You know, I just remind people, you know, I appreciate it, but I'm just a guy. All right? I'm a guy on a mission right now. I got a new mission since I retired from active law enforcement. And that mission, it's 1 and 1A. 1 is the furtherance of freedom and liberty and defending the Constitution throughout the United States. And 1A is to defend the honor, the service, the sacrifice, the courage, and the commitment of our nation's law enforcement officers who are under siege right now. It's great to be here in the state of Texas. I love Texas, I really do. I have some, and I can get into trouble sometimes. I know I'm near Houston, but I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. Hey, I give it to you straight. I don't feel bad about that. But actually, my uncle played 8 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. Clarke, he was a tight end. Under Tom Landry, he was all-pro in 1964. So imagine yourself as a 10, 12-year-old kid. You're standing on the sidelines of football games, NFL football games. You're in the locker room meeting people like Don Meredith, Pettis Norman, Bob Lilly. Imagine a 10, 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid with those experiences. How can you leave those behind? So ever since my uncle retired, I remained a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'll tell you what, I've experienced some of the highs during the 90s and some of the lows that have happened over the last, I think it's 16 years now since the Cowboys have been in the Super Bowl. But I mentioned that I get to Texas a lot. This is my first time in Houston. I've been through the Houston airport and a connecting flight to other places, but the first time I've actually got to be in the Houston area, meeting great people like yourself. I've been to Dallas a number of times, obviously. I've been to Midland, Texas. I've been to San Antonio and to Austin. I got to tell you this quick story about Austin. I'm sure the First Lady will love this. I hope I don't get the security at the University of Texas in trouble. The story I want to share with you. I was in Austin to speak at an event, and I'm real big on colleges and universities. Anytime I get to a place where there's a big college, a noted college, I try to get to the campus, I try to get to the bookstore, buy a t-shirt, a hat, something like that. And so I went to UT, the campus, and they got signs around the exterior. You have to have a student ID visible at all times when you walk these grounds. Well, I obviously was a student, didn't have it. You gotta know me and my personality. I'm like, well, I guess all they can do is kick me out, right? So I'm walking to campus, beautiful campus, by the way, it really is. Went to some of the schools there, inside the building, I'm walking around, no ID. And you know, I just had on a pair of shorts, a pair of athletic shoes, and I probably had a t-shirt or something like that. And then I saw the holy grail of college football. Well, there's 2 places. One is in South Bend. University of Texas, Del Royal Stadium. And I said, this is cool. So originally I thought, well, I'll just, stand around the outside. It was during the summer, so they weren't in session. And I thought I'd just walk around the perimeter, take some pictures. And all of a sudden I see this open area. And what was going on was the construction that was going on with the stadium at the time. And so there was this open area, nobody at the door. And like I said, I'm like, I'll just act like I belong here. So I walk inside, it's a true story. I walk inside and I go into the seating area and I'm taking pictures, the scoreboard and everything. And I thought, wow, I wonder what happened if I go down to the field. So I walk down onto the field, and I'm taking selfies, I'm taking pictures. There's construction workers walking all around. I didn't have a hard hat on. And nobody said anything or stopped me, but that was kind of cool that I got to experience that unguided tour, so to speak, of the University of Texas campus. Anyway, I talked about the mission that I'm on, and I came upon it, I should say, in a bizarre sort of way. It was after the ugly days of Ferguson, Missouri, where Officer Darren Wilson had to save his own life and used deadly force against citizen there, Mike Brown. And that really kicked off this new war on cops. The war on cops is not new. The last time we saw it to this extent was during the 60s, during the riots that swept across the country, and the Vietnam War, and they kind of took it off on the police, because the police are on the front line. They're standing in the way of where these people want to be and where they want to go, right? Where the line, that thin blue line. And this profession came under attack from some likely suspects. I was aware of who they were, these subversives, these anti-American, socialist, communist subversives. And what those subversives did, like they did during the 60s, they infiltrated this, what turned out to be the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, another anti-cop. I call it a hate group. And all of a sudden, the riots are sweeping across the country. Cops are under siege. This profession is under siege. And I'm sitting. I was the sheriff of Milwaukee County, and I'm watching this unfold on TV. The riots in New York after Eric Garner died. Freddie Gray in Baltimore. There was a couple. Walter Gray in South Carolina. That was a different situation there, uncalled for. But I'm watching this, and I knew what was going on. The reason how I knew what was going on is I had met this former CIA agent who, when he was an active agent, he was with a unit that worked on the communist movement inside America. So he studied these groups, these anti-American, these socialist and communist groups. And there's papers that he authored, papers that he wrote, I should say, didn't author them, these things weren't let out to the public, but then there was a book, a very, very in-depth book of these groups throughout the United States and the history of this communist movement in the United States of America. And he sent me the book that he had on it. He sent me all these papers, and he said, I've been watching you, and this stuff might come in handy for you one day. So I did what I always do. I try to educate myself on something before I open my big fat mouth. Unlike a lot of people on TV, they're just flapping their gums. They have no idea what they're talking about, but it sounds kind of informative, but it's really not. And so I read this book. It's a thick book too. And I read this, these papers that he sent, and so I was beginning to understand the psychology of how this movement works. What they do is they infiltrate seemingly innocent or decent type movements, and they use it as a mask, but really they're trying to bring down the government of the United States. Okay? Using, in this case, Black Lives Matter as the mask. Black Lives Matter wasn't trying to bring down the government of the United States. So they infiltrate these groups to do their dirty work and their dirty deeds, and they find these groups that, there's some sort of sympathy toward what they're doing, whether we understand it or not. And the Black Lives Matter movement was talking about use of violence against black males in the United States. So I read this stuff and learned about what this group was really up to, which is why when I got to talk about it on TV, by the way, I'm on another thing, Newsmax TV, they hired me probably going on 2 years ago. They hired me away from Fox, and I'm on Newsmax frequently to talk about issues of race, crime, and politics. And I was pretty forceful in my description and my labels for these insurgents. I was not diplomatic because I knew what they were up to. All right, and I called it Black Lives Matter, L-I-E-S. I call them a hate group, and a lot of people that didn't understand what they were really about, look, aren't you a little harsh? What do you mean? They're just talking about, no, they're not. I said, you have no idea. This is a communist movement, a socialist movement that advocates for the overthrow of the United States government. And I'm not going to take that lightly, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm not going to get in there, in these platforms. Yeah, well, we need to have a discussion. No, get the hell out of here. Was my attitude. But see, I knew what I was talking about because I educated myself on it first. So, I look at this situation today, and it's still going on. I'll get into that in a little bit. And it's got to be beaten back. Right? You're going to have to take off the gloves. I'm not talking about the cops. I'm talking about the support groups. I'm talking about, like, the business development group here. And I'm talking about the community groups. And I'm talking about law-abiding citizens. You're going to have to beat this thing back because it's very dangerous. They're trying to weaken the institution of police. The institution of police, as you know, is vital in maintaining law and order in civilized society. You have to have somebody uphold that. Otherwise, you have chaos. And you've seen it. You've seen when the social order collapses and a riot breaks out, and the arsons, and the property damage. People's businesses are destroyed, for heaven's sakes. Their livelihoods. When the social order collapses, and there's only really one group that's out there that's willing to defend that, and that's the American law enforcement officer. So, I'm always receptive when I get invited to these types of events. I probably speak more now to political groups, GOP groups, conservative groups, freedom-loving groups, Second Amendment groups, but anytime I get a chance to speak to a law enforcement community, I take it. All right? But as I was indicating, I sat up here and watched this attack on this fine profession, this outstanding profession, this vital profession, and nobody was pushing back. And what I mean by nobody, let me be clear, one law enforcement executive was defending the men and women they sent out into harm's way every day, knowing, 99% of these people, man, they do the right thing, they do it every day. These people are willing to die for their community. And human nature being what it is, sometimes you get some bad apples. That's like in any other profession. Like, you got doctors, teachers. You name any profession, you're going to have some bad apples. You can't afford it in this profession, though, because of the authority that we carry. But I thought, this is unbelievable. And so I did what nobody else was willing to do. And I started speaking out, and I had some platforms. That was when I was on Fox News. I was on 3-4 times a week. Sometimes 2-3 times a day on our different shows, defending this damn profession. And I just couldn't believe it, though, that not a lot of law enforcement executives, I'm not saying none, but there were none that were standing up nationally and going, hold on just a minute. What the hell are you talking about? And explaining why these situations happen the way that they do. So I took it on, and I knew it was wrought with peril. I knew it, that I would be under attack for doing that. I didn't care. And the reason I didn't care, because I was sending men and women in Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, deputies, out into harm's way every day, not knowing if they were going to come back. And I at least wanted them to know, hey, look, I understand the complexity of this work. I've done it for a long time. I did 24 years in the City of Milwaukee Police Department, urban policing. I worked in the Detective Bureau. I worked violent crimes. When I got promoted to lieutenant, I was in charge of the police officer shooting team. You know, when there was a police use of force, we had a team of officers who were trained, and we went out and investigated those things. I was on that unit. Then when I got promoted to lieutenant, I supervised that unit. So I understand the police use of force, is what I'm saying. And I understand how it applies to the law. Because the law is the guiding aspect of this. Not people's opinion, not couldn't they have shot him in the leg, not could they have done something else. That doesn't guide this. Supreme Court decisions guide. I know what those Supreme Court rulings say, Tennessee v. Garner. So, I was disappointed in my fellow law enforcement executive colleagues. I said, come on, man, I'm out here fighting this by myself. And too many of them just wanted to keep their heads down. There were law enforcement chiefs marching with Black Lives Matter. I saw it. I didn't just hear about it. I saw it. I was disgusted. The least that I could have done with my own staff is if you get out there in this complex world and stuff starts to happen, stuff starts to fall apart through no fault of your own, I get it. Things can go to hell in a hurry through no fault of yours. And as long as you stay within the Constitution, the policies, your training, I'll back you. I don't care how ugly it looks, I'll back you. And that was my message to law enforcement officers all across America. Got your back on this. If I got to look at one of these situations and I get a chance to talk about it on TV, I'll explain it because I'm familiar with this stuff. Done it a long time. Okay, so that's how I ended up. Sean Hannity gave me the moniker America's Sheriff. That's how I got to be in this position, spokesperson, so to speak, the voice of the law enforcement community, because I used to remind my law enforcement officers of this as well. Let me handle the politics. You guys just go out and serve your community. And the cop doesn't have a voice. As they're out there getting rocks and bricks thrown at them, and shot at, like two of New York's finest. December of 2014, sitting in a cruiser in Brooklyn. When a guy comes up and unloads into the car, killing both officers, Rafael Ramirez and Wenjon Liu. I remember the names. I went to the funerals. And, you know, the cop doesn't have a voice. We really don't want the cops getting involved in the political end of this, but that's what besides, I was an elected official. I get to engage in politics. So that's why I do what I do in support of this profession. The war on cops still rages. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. We can't worry about that. We have to worry about protecting our communities. We have to worry about maintaining law and order in this civilized society so that people can exist and feel safe in their homes, in their schools, in their neighborhoods. You know, I'm talking about everywhere, but specifically in these urban centers. These urban centers are jungles. St. Louis, Missouri, Chicago, Illinois, LA, Milwaukee, Detroit, New York, Baltimore, Seattle, I can go on and on and on. These urban centers are jungles. People living in fear every day. Kids at night sleeping in the bathtub to provide shelter in case of drive-by shooting, bullets flying all hours of the day. Can you imagine having to make your kids sleep in the bathtub at night for protection? What the hell kind of quality of life is that? See, this is the stuff that I know. And people want to understand, they don't understand why I get so adamant about this. About the need for more police support, more police resources. Not for me, but for the good, law-abiding people that have to live in these jungles. Mainly poor, black, and Hispanic, ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. I care about them. I don't care about Black Lives So, you know, get a chance, read my book, Cop Under Fire. I talk about a lot of these things. It'll give you more insight. Even when I come to speak here, they told me 30, 40 minutes. I don't know. I don't watch the clock. I suppose if I talk too long, you folks will get up and just start leaving. You won't hurt my feelings. You won't. Because like I said, who I am is not important, but what I have to say is very important. But the book will give you a bird's eye view of why is David Clarke the way he is, and how did he get to be that way? And I explain it in the book, where I get time to sit down and explain things. Whereas on TV, you got to talk in sound bites on TV. Sound bites. A 5-minute interview is a long interview. Most of the time, it's like 3 minutes, and not 3 minutes of you talking. The interviewer talking, but the segment might be 5-6 minutes. So you got to talk in sound bites. You don't get to explain it like I just explained to you in the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes that I've been up here talking. You got to talk in sound bites. Radio's a little better because radio, they're not under this gun, and you know, so to speak, and you get to talk a little longer. And then I write. I love to write. I write about these things, and I get to take the time to explain. What do you mean, why do I call them Black Lives Matter? Because it's a socialist group. That hates police officers. By the way, the guy that killed the 2 NYPD officers, same thing happened not too far from here in Dallas. Guys who had claimed, I did this to avenge for Black Lives Matter. And I'm supposed to say something nice about this group? You gotta be kidding. Because they hate police. They hate white folks. They hate America. So now I want to get into this evening talking about a few developments that have occurred recently that are begging for additional comment, and who better to provide that commentary than yours truly. The first comes out of the state of Arizona, where the legislature recently passed a bill making it a misdemeanor offense for anyone filming a police officer within 8 feet and after having been warned to stop doing so. The bill, signed into law by former Governor Doug Ducey, is intended to create a buffer to prevent clashes with police and bystanders in tense situations. My initial reaction when I read the story was, it's about damn time. We've all sat and watched demonstrators and rioters get right up in the face of police officers who are standing on a police line and yell obscenities, spit at, and throw objects like rocks, batteries, and urine and feces-filled balloons at police when the officers are doing nothing more than holding the line, as they say. You also have undoubtedly seen bystanders with their cell phone cameras where police are conducting a field interview or a traffic stop. This is an officer safety issue, as it distracts officers away from the subject they have detained and thus have to watch both that person and the crowd or group heckling police. Every state should enact such a law. So for members of the Texas legislature that are here tonight, there's a bill for you to introduce. Let's model it after Arizona's. Officers are trained to keep people out of their lunge area, that amount of distance between them and a subject. That area keeps distance between someone going after their gun or other piece of equipment that, once obtained, can be turned on and used against the officer. What I find peculiar, however, is that they determine 8 feet to be the distance that the person has to stay away. They should have made it an even 10, even if for no other reason than to give police a few more feet of protection. The next news story comes out of Miami, where a Miami-Dade officer conducting a traffic stop on a motorist not wearing a seatbelt made an utterance that has many people, including the media, losing their minds. During the exchange, the officer asked for the driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance to the driver, and he told the driver to turn the engine off. That's pretty standard. Pretty simple directions, right? The driver couldn't find his license or his registration, and he didn't turn off the car as ordered. The officer, after finally receiving the driver's license, said in an ongoing exchange, quote, "A simple thing, man. This is how you guys get killed out here." Okay, not the smoothest way to talk to people, but that's not the worst thing I've ever heard cops say in dealing with the public. Now the vultures are circling overhead in this anti-police environment, trying to make it on the level of some of the other high-profile incidents involving police. Yes, over this state. Now everybody is giving their opinion as to what the officer meant by that statement. My reaction is, yeah, I heard the officer say it. Who flipping cares? That officer will have to defend what he meant by that statement. And now the Metro-Dade Police, check this out. The Metro-Dade Police have started an internal investigation and have removed the officer from street duty and placed him on administrative desk duty. Seriously? Over this? That reaction by the Miami-Dade Police Department feeds into the hair-on-fire reaction from the cop-hating crowd. An appropriate disposition here would be for the officer's supervisor to counsel him with a verbal warning about interpersonal communications, maybe even order some additional training on it. The chief of the department should have said to the media soon after the incident, "Let's move on." Speaking of how guys get killed out here, another police deadly use of force in Akron, Ohio has captured national attention. Although each incident is intricately different, there are some similar aspects. This involves a police stop for a traffic violation, the driver refusing to pull over and stop, the driver leading police on a high-speed pursuit during which it was reported he fired shots at the pursuing officer. Additional facts are that he finally pulls over, but then he gets out of the car and continues to flee on foot. Oh, and another thing, he's wearing a ski mask over his head, like that's normal behavior. Now let's unpack this. Fleeing from police according to the Supreme Court case. Remember I said this stuff is guided by the law, not people's opinion. According to the Supreme Court case, Illinois v. Wardlaw, fleeing is the height of suspicious activity, and the police then have reasonable suspicion to pursue the subject to find out why they're fleeing. The law says so. You know, I was on a Fox News interview with a lawyer. I don't have anything per se against lawyers. Well, maybe I do. But anyway, I'm talking about a police pursuit. It was the Freddie Gray case out of Baltimore. And you know, this lawyer said, fleeing from the police is not a crime. I had done my homework before I went on TV, and I said, "Sir, I don't know where you got your law degree from, but you need to go back and ask him for your money back." And I said, according to Illinois versus Wardlaw, the court ruled, and then I said, fleeing from the police is a height of suspiciousness, and it gives the officer reasonable suspicion to pursue to find. So how can this lawyer get up there and say, well, that's not a crime? That's no justification to go after it. Yes, it is, according to the law. Leading police on a high-speed vehicle pursuit puts the officers in grave danger as well as other motorists in the area. And then there is the firing on pursuing officers. As the suspect is fleeing on foot, he turns toward the officers, making eye contact. That's called target acquisition, a move necessary for an armed subject to complete before firing on them. So just the mere turning back and looking after he's already shot at officers, it's reasonable for the officers to pursue. He's looking back at us because his line of fire, and he knows where to shoot at. And it gives the law enforcement officer the reasonableness, I can't say the right, the reasonableness to use deadly force. That's what happened here. That's what the law says. It's reasonable for officers responding who have already been fired upon to conclude that he would shoot at them again. So they opened fire, killing the suspect. The suspect's gun was found inside the vehicle, so he left it behind when he got out. The cops don't know that. So people made a big deal, well, he didn't have the gun at the time, he's unarmed. I said, no, he fired at officers. Now comes the typical knee-jerk reaction from the media, the family, and other cop haters. About 60 shots were fired by the reported 7 or 8 officers responding to the incident. Everybody's up in arms about the amount of shots fired. I'm not. The suspect was armed, as I indicated, and fired on officers during the pursuit. As far as I'm concerned, all bets are off once you fire or point a gun at a police officer. Nothing in the law on the use of force, remember? Nothing in the law. Not couldn't they have done something else? Or why didn't they do? Nothing in the law on the use of force indicates the amount of shots officers can fire after being shot at. They're allowed to use a level of force to overcome the resistance, not meet it. Overcome the resistance. I know how officers train in these situations in a sterile environment of a shooting range. We train them to fire in 2 or 3 round bursts and then reassess. That's how we train. But anybody who thinks that that will actually be the case in a high adrenaline situation where you have already been shot at is out of their mind. I've investigated police officer use of force shootings. Oftentimes they can't even tell you how many times they fired. That is normal as parts of their brain shut down in an adrenaline attack. They're not counting their rounds like on a firing range. They will get to explain their actions. Under what I've just described, however, the chief of the agency should get out ahead of this to frame a narrative that gets into the minds of the public before the lies and misinformation will come from the media and the cop haters. Remember, hands up, don't shoot? It was a lie. Ferguson, Missouri never happened. But the cop haters got out in front, framing this sentiment in the public, and everyone was believing it. And Mike Brown turned away from the officer, put his hands up and said, don't shoot. He was trying to disarm Darren Wilson. He was half inside the squad car. No, hands up, don't shoot. And that's why I said the chiefs and law enforcement sheriffs need to get out front. Because you know the fact, you know what happened. You're going to get briefed. When you know your officers are in the right, you need to defend them. You need to come out strong. Say, here's an ongoing investigation. I've had to handle these, ladies and gentlemen. Everything I talk about, I've done. So here's an ongoing investigation, not to be determined, but here's what we know so far. Lay it out there. It's called priming the audience. So they should get out ahead of this to frame the narrative that gets into the minds of the public before the lies and misinformation will come from the media and the cop haters. Here are a few example headlines on this incident from major news stories. This Akron, Ohio. These are actual headlines. Video shows Akron cops kill unarmed man in a hail of bullets. Here's another one. Sickening footage shows Akron cops kill an unarmed man in a hail of bullets. Jalen Walker, that's the suspect, was unarmed when 8 officers opened fire. Yeah, that's true. He was unarmed then, but he wasn't a couple minutes ago when he fired shots at law enforcement officers. See, that might be in the body of the story, but it's not the headline. Akron officers killed in a hail of bullets. That's inflammatory rhetoric. Which is why the chief executive or his or her press person has to get out front on these things. Support your officers. Get up there at the news conference and say they got fired at. And this guy had a ski mask. What the hell is a ski mask? It might have been a hold-up man. just say that. Those are facts. Don't give me this, I can't say anything because it's an ongoing investigation. Bullshit. I don't know where that's written. Defend your people. One story even pointed out that Walker was unarmed and running away. Obviously, certain important facts were left out of these stories, like the fact that he refused to comply with officers' commands to take him into custody, and instead led police on a high-speed pursuit, with Walker firing on officers before they fired on him, and then he was wearing a ski mask. Put it out there. Day one. Beat the media and the cop haters to the punch. This investigation is still ongoing, but in my experience in investigating these police uses of force, it leads me to believe that these officers acted reasonably under the circumstances. And like the Miami-Dade officer said, that's how these guys get killed out here. Now, in closing, I'm going to talk about something else that is going on in law enforcement. Again, it's a lack of leadership. Leadership is needed in these situations, ladies and gentlemen. And leadership is hard, but it's necessary. When you're chief executive, you got the stars, you got the gold stars, you get the big pay. You wanted that. They didn't draft you to be the chief or the sheriff. You wanted that. You know what people need from you? Leadership. Your agency needs it, and the community needs it. Then lead. And if you don't want to or you can't, then have the courage to just turn the badge in and go, I'm retiring, I'm done. See ya. Let somebody else do this. And that takes courage too. Don't send people out in the harm's way, your office, and then don't have their back. Malicious prosecutions, and you're not going to say anything about it? Everything I was saying on TV about these incidents, the ones I named, the high profile, the chief of sheriff should have been saying this. When those 6 officers in Baltimore were charged by that politically active district attorney, Marilyn Mosby, the chief of the city of Baltimore police should have been saying what I was saying on TV. I said, these guys, this one, I said, and I was on with, what's that guy's name on it? Alan Dershowitz, who agreed with me. I said, this won't stand. They'll never convict these guys. And Alan Dershowitz, he agreed. He said, I agree with the sheriff. This is malicious prosecution. Because it was. Why wasn't the chief saying that? Potentially, warding that, countering that, those lies, but then also helping prime the community of where the jury's going to be picked from. There's nothing wrong with that. Prime them. Hey, my house just got shot at. So, there's another thing, like I indicated, that's going on in law enforcement. It's the lack of leadership. There's this attempt by this subversive group, Black Lives Matter, to ban the thin blue line flag. Hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. Thin blue line, that symbol, courage, honor, commitment, sacrifice. That's sacred to law enforcement officers. I still wear those bands. I fly the blue line flag. Hey, and I'm retired. Easy for me to just say, it ain't my problem. In my yard, I have a "We Support the Police" yard sign. Thing's been up there for, I don't know, it's 3-4 years. It's not coming down. I don't care what people driving by think. There have been at least 5 law enforcement agencies, there's been more than 5, whose chief has banned their officers from displaying, well, that worked. In other words, they couldn't even wear this band. They banned it. insignias, coffee cups, you know, all the stuff we put blue line flag on. Banned it. Calling it divisive. I go, really? What the flag stands for? We drape the coffin of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty with that flag, and you can call it divisive? This is embarrassing, ladies and gentlemen. This is not leadership. After one chief did it, University of Wisconsin Police, I said of her, she is unfit to lead law enforcement officers with a statement like that. She said, it doesn't represent our values. I go, what the hell values are you talking about? Commitment, honor, service, sacrifice? Those are values. She said, it's not who we are. Anyway, I better stop there. But I had to throw that in at the end because when you see this stuff, and it's coming to a town near you. As a matter of fact, I was in Stoneville, Ohio, at a support the police rally. The chief told me the story. He's got a nice wooden blue line flag that was hand carved by some artist in the lobby, and Black Lives Matter came in and told him they wanted it down and it was divisive. And then the mayor called him, he said, yeah, you know, maybe you should take it down, but he didn't order it. So I went out to address the crowd and I told him about the situation. I said, that lobby over there is this flag. Black Lives Matter wants it down. I said, here's what I would do. And I said, looked at the chief, who was on stage with me. I said, I'm not the chief, but here's what I would do. In that circumstance, I'd have Black Lives Matter come in. I'd listen to them. I have no problem with listening to people. And after they give their spiel, it's divisive, it's just racist and all that, I go, okay, I heard enough. The flag stays, now get the hell out of my office. Now everybody doesn't have the nerve or whatever to do that, I get it. You guys are in a tough situation, women, exactly, you're in a tough situation. But have the courage, for heaven's sakes. I had to get elected. I pissed too many people off my county. I wasn't going to get reelected. And I got reelected 4 times, talking like this, and standing up, not for me, but for my agency, my officers, and the people I serve. They like that message. And I live in a liberal county. Milwaukee County is very liberal. They haven't had a Republican sheriff in 70 years. That's how liberal they are. I didn't care about that part. I didn't care about that. I cared about my officers, and I cared about the people I serve. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for your patience, my long-winded stuff, but that's okay. It's important, and hopefully you leave here tonight. You knew about the fight that we're up against. For the officers, my message is this: you keep your heads held high. I'm proud of you. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Those of you being recognized, please come forward to the stage at this time. You officers, if you would come downstage, Ryan is right here. You can't miss him, big guy. So come right over here and kind of fall in where Ryan is, if you would please. You individuals to be recognized this evening, and the designees to pick up for those that couldn't be with us this evening as well. I believe we've got another video.
Ignites to its first NBA championship, and the following season, Tomjanovich helped engineer one of the most stunning runs in NBA history. The Rockets not only achieved a rare feat, back-to-back championships, but they won it all as a 6th seed, becoming the lowest-seeded team ever to win a title.
Non-believers all along the way. I got one thing to say to those non-believers. Don't ever underestimate the heart of the champion.
Hi, Rudy Tomjanovich here, and I am excited and honored to be a part of this wonderful event. Of course, we're here at the Law Enforcement Appreciation Dinner put on annually by the East Montgomery County Improvement District. We're here to thank the police officers for what they do in our community. We know they have the hardest job in the world, and they definitely have the heart of a champion. Thank you for all you do. We also want to congratulate the Police Officers of the Year, and that's Kelly Horton, Jeff Campbell, and Frank Ortiz. Thank you all for being here and being a part of this great, great event.
And as you come up, Brenda will present you with your trophy for this year. And then please pick up your gift bag that we've assembled and with items donated by our local businesses. Thank you again to the local businesses. So, with the Roman Forest Police Department. And the next officer we have this evening is Officer Carolyn East with Lone Star College Police Department, and accepting for her is Sergeant Twan Wynn. The next officer this evening is Officer Kelly Horton with Wood Branch Police Department. The next officer this evening is Deputy Chris Keene with Precinct 4 Constable's Office. The next awardee this evening is Trooper Ethan McAdoo with the DPS. The next individual this evening is Corporal Henry Mestizo with Splendora Police. Next officer this evening is Sergeant David Miller with Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Next officer this evening is Officer Frank Ortiz with Splendora ISD Police. Next officer this evening is Trooper Benjamin Polanski with the DPS.
Freshly promoted Sergeant Ben
Next awardee this evening is Sergeant Daniel Vieira III, Patton Village Police Department. Let's have a round of applause for all of our officers this evening. Thank you, guys.